Hello, hello. So I'm so happy to be here. So awesome to see familiar faces. So awesome to actually have people show up to listen to me, because that's always a big fear, right? I had a couple of friends say they were going to come in. I'm like, okay, well, that's good. So before I start, I actually want to give a shout out to the song that we were listening to before, while you were filtering in. It's one of my favorites, recovery songs. His name is J.R. Richards. He's the lead singer of Dishwalla. He's kind of doing his own thing right now. The song is Clear Water. I think it perfectly describes how we come clean. It says, clear water, clear, so deep that we can all come clean. And I just love the whole idea of just becoming clean and feeling clean. And I could not find a copy of that song anywhere. And so I reached out to him and I was like, can you send me a copy? Or send me a link where I can buy it? I don't know. But anyway, he emailed me a copy of that song and I told him where I was presenting. And he just donated the song to this cause. So it's 99 cents, but it's awesome because he did that. He and his wife live in London, so it came all the way from London. And he's a huge advocate for mental health awareness because his son struggles with autism. So I just wanted to say publicly thank you to JR, because I really appreciate that. Super happy to be here, like I said. Super happy to be talking about hope. I feel like so often surrounding this topic that we focus on, like Matt Fradd said, we focus on the negative. And it just doesn't work. We all struggle with shame. We all struggle with hopelessness, and we all struggle with these things. So to talk about those things and bring awareness to it is important, but I think talking about those things that will neutralize all those feelings is equally, if not more important. So I'm grateful to be able to talk on hope today. So I hope you guys are okay. It's gonna be like a casual presentation. I'm going to tell lots of stories. I'm going to make lots of eye contact with you. I was kind of a little disappointed that I'm stuck behind the podium because I really wanted to be down there, like talking to you guys and stuff, but I'll do my best from up here. I just want to give you a little bit of background on my story, just so you can see where I came from, because I feel like sometimes it's important to identify the darkness so that we can appreciate the exquisiteness of the light. All right, so beginnings, my curiosity, that's what I talk about when I talk about the beginning of my addiction. By the way, I'm a daughter of God in recovery from a sexual addiction, and that's why I'm here kind of giving voice to those that are in recovery, those who may be seeking recovery, those who may be wondering if recovery is for them, and especially those who may be wondering if recovery is even possible. And I'm also here representing women in sexual addiction because I think that is a topic that is pretty taboo and a lot of stigma and stereotypes surrounding it, especially in Christian circles. And there's a lot of those here in Utah. So although we kind of think that a lot of times we attribute something like pornography addiction or sexual addiction being born from sexual abuse, that is not my story. There are plenty of women that I know and I work with who have suffered from sexual abuse, but mine started more like curiosity. It was small town, eastern Montana. I'm old, so it was way back in the day when you just leave in the morning and mom's like, be home by dinner, and I was safe, right? Or was I guess, because I would play with the neighborhood kids, and it started with, the whole, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And it was just curiosity. I just was curious. And once that curiosity and whatever was presented in front of me was satiated, then that curiosity grew even more and more. And so there isn't anything innately wrong with curiosity. I think where I went wrong is, one, I wasn't sinking it in the right places or asking the right people, and there was no one to regulate that for me because my mom was home with 3 younger kids, and I just didn't, that regulation just wasn't there. So yeah, born from unbridled curiosity. I moved into adolescence, so like 9, 10, 11 years old. I don't know if any of you saw last night. I feel like I'm a little repetitive because I had a KSL spot last night on the news, and what I'm about to share was on there too, so I apologize if you're hearing this twice. But I remember my dad would bring home VHS videotapes that he rented at the video store. See, I told you I was old. And those tapes would contain sex scenes in them. And I remember at about 10 years old, sitting in front of the TV and rewinding those VHS tapes and just watching those sex scenes on loop. Play, rewind, play, rewind, play, rewind. And at the time, I didn't know that it was bad. At the time, I didn't really know what need in me it was filling. I just knew that it felt good and that I liked watching it. My mom came in at one point and caught me and immediately went to fear and shame and anger with herself. What are you doing? And at that moment, I didn't think, what am I doing? That's wrong. I thought I need to hide it better next time so mom doesn't find out. And that was when the secrecy with my struggle was born, is right in that moment. It's kind of funny because later on in my teen years, a similar experience happened where I was babysitting at a friend's house, and I had put the kids to bed, and they had satellite. And for those of you who are old like me, remember the satellite was like shh, like static, and like you couldn't see the images, but you could hear the audio. And so there were pornographic channels on that satellite feed, and I remember sitting in front of it. And the only thing I can describe it to, for those of you who've seen Poltergeist, the little girl sitting in front of the TV and just staring at it. And I just remember being 100% almost consumed at like a molecular cellular level, like it was magnetic. Like I needed that fix. And this is probably at 13 or 14 years old. I just needed a glimpse of skin. I was listening to the audio, and I was completely consumed by that. And glancing back now, like, it's funny because at that time I knew something was wrong because it didn't feel good emotionally, and I didn't tell anybody, and I knew my mom would get mad, so I knew something wasn't right, but I wasn't really sure what, because no one talked about it. And then it was about that same time that I discovered masturbation, and that's kind of when can I just say that I'm proud of myself to be able to say that word? Because that's a scary word, and I just want, for anybody who feels uncomfortable with me saying the dreaded M word, I feel your pain, because it's a scary word. So let me tell the story. I think I'm going to get to it later, but I don't even know why I have these cue cards, because I just talk anyway. So when I started recovery and I walked into my bishop's office the first time, so I'm LDS, obviously, I'm trying to keep this kind of church neutral. I am going to talk about God, I should say that, because my recovery wouldn't exist without God. But I walked into my bishop's office and sat down, and I said, I struggle, well, after I should say about a half hour, because it took that long for me to say anything. I said, I struggle with pornography. And he's like, okay. And he's like, and masturbation. And if you could have seen, I wish I had a camera in there, so I could have seen the look on my face was like, no. He just said that word. And I'm like, not physically, but like spiritually, like waiting for the lightning to hit. And I'm like, he's a bishop. He can't say that word. We're gonna get struck. Like I was like floored, and then I was like, like, yeah, I did not want to admit that. But I'm so glad that he asked me that question, because I really am not sure that I would have said anything about it if he hadn't asked that question. So it was definitely inspired. So yes, discovered masturbation about 13 years old, and that's kind of what sunk me at that point. I found this thing because I was really unpopular in high school. I didn't feel connected to my family. I didn't feel connected to church. I didn't feel connected to my community. I was the oldest, and the next one down was like 6 years old, and there's three more kids after that. So I played the role of second mom a lot, and so I had a lot of responsibility put on my shoulders that I feel like disallowed me from just being juvenile sometimes, you know? And so I found this thing that was mine, that made me feel good, that I could do whenever I wanted, and left no mark. No one had to know about it, and it was just mine. It was my precious, is what it became. If you guys are familiar with Lord of the Rings, it became my precious. So struggled with that throughout all of my teen years, and then it moved into my adulthood, where I discovered hardcore pornography when I was about 18 years old. I also started acting out with other people and just struggled with just being promiscuous. And through that couple of years when I was 18, I really began to link love with sexuality. To feel love, to give love, I have to be sexual. And love became sex for me. And yeah, it's so devastating to talk. It's sad, isn't it sad? It makes me sad for myself to think about that, because I see so many women nowadays who come and I'm just like, it's not like that. It was all a lie. Don't believe it. But that's where I was, and that was one of the lowest points in my life, is to think that my innate value was based on how well my body would perform. And I thought, what if I couldn't perform? Then I would have no worth. And that was a pretty devastating place to be. I had a hole in me. Some refer to it as the God hole. It can be referred to as the love hole. And basically it's filled with shame. And I think a lot of us, if you're familiar with Brene Brown, and just there's this huge shame movement, shame/vulnerability movement that's happening right now, which is really awesome. I felt dirty and unworthy, lonely, alone. I felt like I was a disappointment, a smudge, and I really felt like I was the runt of God's children. I'd actually say that to myself all the time. About that time, after I was about 20 years old, I remember walking into my bishop's office, making an appointment with him, but I hadn't been active for years. I had no church clothes. I was scared to death to go in there. The appointment, I will never forget, it was at 10 a.m., this is in LA, Torrance. It was at 10 a.m. in the morning, and I walked in and I sat down in a chair, and no one was in the lobby at that point. But then, as I'm waiting for him, people started filtering in, and I remember linking, so like these chairs, I remember linking my feet in the chairs and like gripping the sides, because my flight was on such high alert, that because all of a sudden all these people came out, and I dubbed them as pretty people. All these pretty people are out, and I'm not one of them. I'm wearing ratty old tennis shoes and jeans and a t-shirt, and I can't believe I'm even in a church looking like this. And I think back to that experience, and even though I'm describing physical circumstances, that was emotional for me. That is how I felt emotionally and spiritually. Ratty old tennis shoes, ratty jeans, like I was that, like in the Kelly Clarkson song that was played. I don't remember the phrase, but you know, pick up the thing off the ground where you throw things away, or however it was, I don't remember. But that's how I felt. I was just torn to bits. And that was a turning point for me, though, in one of the, so I'm going to be talking about 5 principles that grow hope, and that's kind of one of them, is just talking about it, and that's really important. So throughout my adulthood, I cycled, got married. My wonderful husband here, who was so gracious to plug my computer in for me, got married, struggled through my marriage. Marriage doesn't fix it. In fact, it makes it worse, because all of a sudden lust becomes legal, right? Yeah, it doesn't fix it. So struggled throughout my marriage, didn't even tell him. I mean, he knew I struggled a little bit, but I don't think I even knew the depths of what I really struggled with. So I just cycled. We know it's a cycle, right? Addiction is a cycle. I act out, and I feel good while I'm acting out, and then afterwards, I feel shame about it and swear I will never do it again. Never, never, never will do it again. And then the craving kicks in, and then the numbness wears off and the high wears off, and I feel all of these emotions that I don't want to feel. And so then I act out again. I eventually crash again, and that's the cycle I lived in for years and years and years and years. And when eventually I found a 12-step program that welcomed me with open arms, and I found my family there. I found my tribe. And so I attended that meeting for about 3 years when one day this woman walked in, and I'd heard this 100 times, I swear. This woman walked in and she sat down and she said, "I thought I was the only one." And I thought, oh my gosh, someone needs to talk about this. What the heck? Because every single one of us thought we were the only one, right? And I actually said in my mind, out loud in my mind, right? Someone needs to talk about this. And the Spirit whispered, "How about you?" And I said, "What? That is not what I meant." And I was like, hell no? Okay, so yeah, so that's what I thought. But I was like, so for the next 9 months, I went back and forth with God, like coming out with my story, don't come out with my story. And I weighed the pros and cons constantly, the pros and cons of coming out with my story, going public. And I realized that every single con was fear-based. I feared. I was terrified of judgment. I was scared of what people were going to think. I was scared of disappointing my family. I was scared that the bishop would say, "You're not worthy to come to church." I was scared that my husband would leave me. I was scared that my realizations of fearing that I was like this most awful mother because I'm addicted to this would come true, and I would be disowned. Like, I was scared of what my friends would say. I was scared of rumors. I was scared of my job finding out. How devastating would that be? So back and forth with the fear. And then I remember reading in Psalms one day, and King David, in one of his verses, said, "I will not fear what man can do unto me." And that was my kick in the pants, that Heavenly Father's like, "It's been 9 months, dude. It's time." So then I came out with my story, started a blog, By the Light of Grace. I'm on your handout. It's at the bottom, so you can check it out there. And I just want to say, because I get the question a lot, why did you choose to go public? Why would you talk about this? And I decided to love the people more than I fear. And that's what it comes down to. And that doesn't mean I perfectly love the people and I have no fear. It just means the balance, the weight is on the love side. And I'm so grateful for that. I imagine a woman where I was once. I imagine a room where it's kind of empty, and then in the corner is shadowed, and a woman is in that corner, in that darkness, huddled in the fetal position, straining to not touch the light that's right next to her, because if she touches that light, then she will be exposed. And I feel like coming out with my story is me reaching into that dark spot, saying, "You don't have to hide anymore. You can come out now." And there's so much power in that. Beautiful. So grateful. So I want to talk about 5 lifeblood lessons that grow hope, that have grown hope in my own recovery. I do want to give a shout out though to, I thought about this long and hard because I know that I'm in a pretty powerful position here representing women, and not very many voices are out there public with that. And I thought, what could I talk about that's just women? I didn't want to come up here and list a whole bunch of statistics. That's not me, and there are lots of people who are way better at doing that than me. I just can't do that. And I kept thinking, I just want to talk about hope. And I was like, you know what? Hope is universal. It's human. It's not male or female. So my representation of women here today is just that I am standing here, that I am sharing with you that I struggle with pornography and masturbation and all sorts of other branches of sexual addiction, and that there is hope. So I'm representing women, but I'm representing humanity as well. So the first lifeblood lesson I want to talk about is just because I believe it doesn't make it true. So I learned this principle really, really early on in recovery. I remember going to my support group meetings and seeing all the happy people because they were happy, and I'm like, you're stupid. Like, how are you happy? Do you not struggle with what I struggle with? Because I am not happy. So secretly I called them the stupid happy people, but they love me anyway. So I remember wanting so badly to reach out to them. I wanted what they had. I wanted that happiness. I wanted that freedom from shame. I wanted to be able to love myself, not in spite of or because of what I struggled with, but just love myself. I'd never experienced that. I didn't know how to do it, but I could see that they were doing it, so I wanted to know how to do it. But I had all of these false beliefs running through my head. I had all of these lies that they were my everyday, every moment of every day. I had lies running through my head. And so I had to get rid of them, and I had to figure out a way to break out of that bombardment of lies and isolation. And so I remember sitting in group one day, and this was so hard for me to do, but I remember sitting in group one day, and I said, I'm going to ask something of you guys. I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to believe you when you answer them, because I can't believe myself. I can't, because I believed that I was a leech. I believed that I was wasting their time. I believed that I was whiny and that I was stuck in self-pity and all of these things. And for those reasons, I couldn't reach out to them. Some other false beliefs that I believed I couldn't talk to my bishop because what I would tell him and the things that I would confess would trigger him, and then I would be responsible for his thoughts. So I can't talk to my bishop. Can't do that. Felt like I was burdening them. So that was the first lie that I decided not to believe. I said to them, if I am burdening you, or if you feel like I am a leech, or if I am overstepping in any way, I need you to tell me. And I will believe you if you tell me. But if you don't tell me, then I'm going to believe that I'm not doing those things. And no one ever came to me. No one ever said, you're overstepping. And then those relationships began to blossom. Those connections began to grow because I made the effort to believe. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later, is the power of belief and the power that we have with our agency. So that was pretty powerful for me. This is one that is so powerful that I just learned just probably a few months ago. It's so important. So we often hear, it's kind of like this, it's scriptural, it's kind of societal, where we are judged based on the desire of our heart. What do we want? Well, I want sex. I want to lust. My heart, I lust, so that's obviously what I want. I engage in pornography or I engage in masturbation, so that's obviously what I want. That is the desire of my heart. Well, I don't wake up in the morning and say, I want those things. Even when I'm doing those things, I don't want those things. So deciphering the difference between the desire of my addiction and the desire of my disease and the desire of my physical craving as a result of the disease of addiction and the brain chemistry changes that have occurred in my brain is different from the desire of my spirit. I desire to be good. I desire to be compassionate. I desire to be loving and to love. I desire to be trustworthy and to trust. I desire to be empathetic and to be vulnerable. I desire to give big fat hugs and mean them. I desire to not fear. I desire all of these things. That is my innate desire. So if I have a slip, if I crave, if I see an image and all of a sudden I'm triggering all over the place, or if I mess up, that's the desire of my addiction. That's the desire of my body. That is not the desire of me. And so understanding the difference between those two really helped me shed a lot of shame and have hope and feel good about myself, because I knew that my addiction could become manageable and that I wasn't my addiction. So if we can separate those two and maybe even ask ourselves in the moment if we're having an especially hard triggering day or whatever, and these principles can be applied to everything. It's not just sex addiction, I should say. I actually ask myself, is this the desire of my body, or is this the desire of me? And what is it that I really desire? And then rest in that. So I think that's pretty powerful. So the third one, this is a recovery phrase I say that I coined probably a few years in to recovery, my recovery tribe, friends. This is just mine. I say it all the time. It just is, and I just am. And this is where I wanted to talk about the power of agency. I think a lot of times we get stuck in victim thinking that the world is happening to us instead of us happening to the world. And this is where one of the ways that I was able to act on my agency. But I want to give a caveat to that, because when we act on our agency, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have those feelings first. For instance, if I slip, I view pornography. Man, I messed up. It just is, and I just am. I just had a slip. I struggle with it. It just is. I just am. I totally lost my train of thought. Dang it, my dream has been realized. Oh, okay. Yeah, I have no idea what I was going to say. Totally just lost it. So we'll just move on to the next point. And then I'll remember at 4 in the morning, and I will text the people that I have phone numbers for. I remember. All right, so behavioral mistakes versus innate flaws. Is it something that we just made a mistake on, or is it an innate flaw? That's the difference between it just is and I just am. I wanted to share a couple of story on this, because this principle, sometimes people might struggle thinking how it applies, the practical application of it. So here's a couple of things. This is me being really vulnerable, because I know this is something that isn't really talked about so much. So when I was going through my recovery at first, I started to have emotional feelings towards my bishop, and it was awful for me. I felt so much shame for it, because you just don't do that. Now I can recognize that the feelings I had were me. Like I had absentee fathers when I was growing up, and I was being vulnerable with a man for the first time, someone who was safe for me, and I was able to actually feel, and he was kind of there to listen to all of those feelings. But still, I kept those feelings locked in me for so long, and I felt so much shame for them. I did everything in my power to get rid of them. So I went and I told my husband. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Yeah, that conversation was fun. I told my stake president. I went to him and was like, you're going to switch me wards, right? Because this sucks. And he's like, nope, we're not. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with you. But here's the thing. Through that, I was able to discover at the end, it just is and I just am. I struggle with developing feelings for men in authority. Like it just is and I just am. And so because of that, I have to set boundaries to keep myself safe and to keep myself honest and to keep them safe and to keep them honest. So I don't create situations in where those feelings can flourish. I did a whole lot of things wrong with that relationship with that bishop that it happened to that I will never, ever do with any bishop coming forward because of those boundaries. So in actuality, going back, I'm grateful for that experience, even though that it was really hard. But no one talks about that, right? No one talks about that. Because when I first opened up about it, no one talks about that. That's just, you don't talk about that. Same-sex attraction. I have same-sex attraction. I don't even say that I struggle with it anymore, because to me, if I say I struggle with it, then there's shame attached to it. So I just have it. I don't act on it. I just have it. And I don't know why, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why, but I don't waste my time on that anymore, because it doesn't really matter. What matters is that I just, in my own belief system, I don't act on it, but I just have it, and it's not bad. it's what I do with it, So I just have it. It just is, and I just am. So that third point I think is really important too. So number 4, learning to get up shame-free. So this is probably the most powerful lesson that I ever had or learned in my recovery. So when we slip, when we have mess ups, not feeling shame for that and getting up and keeping going. There's a quote out there that says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And I think that's so, it doesn't matter how many times we fall down as long as we get up one more than how many times we fall down, right? So it was about 9 months into I don't know how, I was probably about a year into my recovery-ish, year and a half. And I had been sober for 9 months, and then I slipped. And on the scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to devastation, it was really probably a 10 on that. I remember coming to group just sobbing my face off. I felt like I disappointed myself, my bishop, my husband, my group, my bishop, did I say that already? My family. I just felt like I was a smudge of disappointment because I felt like up until that point, my recovery, my worth was based on my sobriety. So this is a learning process, right? So this is actually really good for me to go through this, even though it was really painful at the time. And I remember thinking, how do I get up? How do you get up after this? I was doing so good. I just fell down to the bottom of the mountain. How do you get up? And my husband had come home, and he had heard a story at his recovery meeting that just expanded in my mind, and this is what came from it. So I imagine that I'm in a arena, like at the Olympics, right? A big arena where there's a racetrack for runners, and there's hurdles. There's hurdles everywhere. You know when you see those pictures and it skims the top of the hurdles? There's hurdles for miles. And I'm running, and I'm jumping hurdles, and I'm like, dude, I'm doing so good. And I don't jump hurdles, so yeah. So in this dream, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm jumping hurdles. Oops, how do I go back? There we go. Okay, so I'm jumping hurdles, and then all of a sudden something happens, and I lose my rhythm, and I'm like, oh crap, what happened? And you know how you're like, run, double step, jump, run, oops, double step, jump. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, my rhythm is gone, what's gonna happen? And I could see it coming before it happened. And I'm like, I'm gonna fall. I can feel it fall, I'm not gonna make the next hurdle. And I did, I clipped the top and I fell over. And I crashed to the ground. And everything slowed down to like this surreal, almost like I'm gonna pass out, sick, like, what just happened? And I looked down at my knees, and they're bloody, and my hands are bloody. And I remember turning around and looking at the hurdle and going, oh my gosh, you fell. And it was awful. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, what do I do? And the crowd, who had once been cheering me on, go, you're awesome, is now jeering at me and yelling at me, why were you even running in the first place? You were not going to do good. You should just stay down. Don't even bother getting up, because you're just going to fall again. All of a sudden, it was so loud. And then I heard this voice, and it was strong, but it was quiet, and it said, get up. And I said, what? And I strained to hear it, and it said, get up. And I was like, what do you mean, get up? Can't you see that I've fallen? Can't you see that I failed? What do you mean, get up? I'm just going to fall again. And it said, get up. And I realized at that point that it was God, and he's sitting next to me. He's not up in the stands or up in the sky talking from way up there. He's right next to me, deep in the trenches with me, on the ground, on all fours. Get up. That's all I want. Just get up. I don't care that you fell. I don't care that you've fallen. I just want you to get up. That's it. And so I had this moment, and this is where agency and the power of choice comes in. I could choose to listen to the crowd that's pointing fingers at me and shooting arrows at me and shaming me from the stands in a mob mentality, or I could choose to listen to the one who's sitting right next to me. And so I did. I chose to get up. And it wasn't easy at first. You can't just get your rhythm back right away. You can't pretend that it didn't happen. So I started running, and I was really scared to jump that first hurdle again. But I kept running, and I jumped it. And I was like, oh, sweet, I got it again. And he was right next to me that whole time. And so I'm running, and then at some point, I afforded myself a glance back, and this was the most beautiful part. I turned around, and the fallen hurdle was lost in the sea of hurdles that were still standing. I couldn't even see it anymore. It wasn't even there. And I think we, as a human race, give so much credit to our fallen hurdles and so little credit to those hurdles we jump every moment of every day. And that's what we need to focus on. So that was huge for me to be able to slip and say, what can I learn from this? And how can I not feel shame for this, not feel shame for it, and just say, it is what it is. It just is, and I just am, and I'm just going to keep going. And that's all he wanted anyway. So there's my hurdle story. All right. So the last one is, some of the most powerful words in the universe are me too. This is something that I don't know. I talk about this all the time too. There's some recovery people in the audience, and I'm like, they're probably so sick of me talking about this, but I love this concept, because we all have those conversations, and it doesn't even have to be about something this heavy, but it's like, okay, so for instance, my husband and I, when our very first date, right, we're going to Cracker Barrel. We're driving in the car, and he says, I don't eat meat off the bone. I think it's the most disgusting thing ever. And I was like, oh, me too. And then I thought, but that doesn't mean anything. We're not going to get married or anything. Because I was really scared he was going to think that. But anyway, but I don't. I still think it's disgusting to this day. But all of a sudden, it wasn't the only weird one, right? I wasn't the only one that stuck out, and I was totally weird. But we have those experiences all the time. Now imagine having that experience with someone where it's not just weird, but it's shameful, it's gross, it's dirty, it's disgusting. It's something that we think we're the only one in, and that if we tell somebody and they learn about it, they're going to hate us for it, and they're going to not be our friend anymore, and they're not going to love us anymore. When we say that, when we stand up and we be the me too, it is one of the most powerful words in the universe. It's awesome. Isolation, it sucks. Feeling like we're the only one sucks. This is one of the reasons that I came out with my story, is that so many other people had already been the me too for me, and I felt like it was time for me to be the me too for them. If we're scared to be the me too, and we don't have that voice yet, that's fine. It took me 3 years to come out with my story. And it doesn't even have to look like my story. Talking about it and being the me too doesn't mean you have to go public. You don't have to talk in UCAP. It's scary. I don't recommend it. But surround yourself with those that are being the me too, because that cultivates courage. So in the interest of me too and cultivating that courage, I want to take the liberty and ask some of you to be courageous. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, don't. But if you do, I would like you to do it. Those of you who struggle with any form of sexual addiction or are in recovery for it, would you please stand? Those of you who are struggling and didn't stand, these guys are your Me Too's. You see how powerful that was? That was amazing. Thank you for your courage. I need tissue. I'm serious. What girl has tissue? I need tissue. No one has tissue? What? Where's my trash? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, gotta catch the mascara before it runs everywhere. Okay, so I love that. That was beautiful. Thank you. So in the end, and to just wrap up, I just want to share what hope looks like. This is hope. Today, I am 3 years, 11 months, and 5 days sober. I actually shared this with my bishop that worked with me in my recovery. I shared this with him this morning, and he's like, who would have ever thought that that would have happened? Because when I first started working with him, I was going minutes, days. Like, it was literally days. And those days were white-knuckled, scraping by, trying to just telling myself, not today, maybe tomorrow, not today, maybe tomorrow, like every single day. And sometimes it didn't work out that way. But 3 years, 11 days, 11 months, 5 days, that's just crazy to me. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that. Anyway, so I just wanted to kind of open it up to discussion. If anybody has any questions or specific to women who struggle with sexual addiction, specific to my story, whatever you want to ask. Yes. That's a really good question. So the question is from a single woman who is asking, in marriage, what are some triggers, like what are some things you have to look out for? And this is something that my husband and I, he's also in recovery, struggled with really bad early in our recovery because our marriage was based on lust because we were both addicted. So our sexual relationship was based on lust very, very much the first part of our marriage. And then getting married, and then starting to work recovery to back off of that. When that faucet, I talk about it like it's a faucet that's just cranked all the way on. So like have to turn that off is like really, really hard. But one thing that really, really helped me, and there's this list out there, and you can find it on my blog, called Worldly Sex versus God-Ordained Intimacy. And one thing on that list said, take exquisite care to not offend the Spirit. And that, honestly, that's what I latched onto, is what I'm doing or what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. Is it offending the Spirit? Is it self-seeking or is it connective? Am I present or am I not present? So those are some things that I look for. Did that help? Okay, good, awesome. Sweet, anybody else? Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Awesome question. She works for LDS Family Services, so she's asking about bishops and my experience with my bishops and how to reduce shame for women going in to see their bishop, which is difficult as already because they're a man and we're not supposed to be sexual, right, or have that problem. So, for me, my personal experience with my bishop was that he was deadpan. He did not react at all. And let me tell you, I was looking for that reaction. I was looking for the eyebrows to raise, like, oh. I was looking for I was looking for him to look away. I was looking for body language to tell me what his voice wasn't telling me. And I didn't get any of that. He literally said, okay, let's just work on it. And so his response, I think, with the bishops, if we can somehow train them or just prepare them to not react, or my bishops told me that he used to go into this may be healthy or not, I don't know. This is just what worked for him. But he would go into every meeting prepared to hear the worst, and then when it wasn't, he was like, oh, good. And so that worked out fine for him. But we do have to be really careful. I think the key here is education. It's just ecclesiastical leaders need to be educated and open, So, good question. Any other? Oh, let's go with the guy first. Oh, I love the 12 steps. So I started with LDS Addiction Recovery Program. I now work for the Healing Through Christ Foundation and attend meetings through them. I don't advocate for one program, I advocate for all of them. The 12 steps can work for anybody, not just anybody addicted. It's like the atonement for W's. That's what we call it sometimes. So anyways. It just teaches us to be honest about our mistakes, to be open about them. It teaches hope. It teaches connection with God. It teaches us how to be honest, shame-free. It teaches us how to be accountable. It teaches us how to be spiritual. And I live the 12 steps all the time. They're a part of my life. I can see the 12 steps in everything that I do. I definitely advocate for the 12 steps. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we've been back and forth on that. For me, I have to admit that if my spouse were to have a slip, I would say, dang, well, I get a freebie. But then I wouldn't, because I quickly recognized that was not right. What it came down to is I had to work recovery for me. I didn't work recovery for anybody else. I did it for me. And when I was able to do it for me, then it didn't matter what anyone else was doing. Husband, kids, other family, I was doing it for me. And once I solely, and this happened, I'm totally gonna put you on the spot here. I hope it's not too embarrassing. But here I go. So when I very first started recovery, the first meeting I went to, sobbed the whole time, came home, was standing at the kitchen table, sharing with my husband what I had found, because I thought I'd found the gold at the end of the rainbow, and I was so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm sharing through tears, this is gonna be amazing. And he was checked out at his computer, just checked out, and it was doing the, that's nice, honey, And it was at that moment that I thought, it can't be about him. And I had to detach with love. So when I say detach, I didn't leave him or move out or anything. I just went and I worked recovery for me. And so I think that's the key right there. And if both work recovery for them, then two healthy people can come together, So, good question. That's a good question. I'm sorry. Someone hug her. You are worthwhile regardless. It was my relationship with God that healed that hole. That's why it's called the God hole. I communicated with him every moment of every day. I talked to him like he was right beside me. To be protected, this is really weird, but you guys have heard of cherubims out of the Bible, right? They're supposed to guard the pearly gates or something like that. I asked for a personal one to be my bodyguard, and I named him Rod because he was the rod of iron. And it worked for a while. And then when I felt I was strong enough, I said, okay, you can give him to somebody else because I'm good now. But I asked for what I needed, and I expected it in return. And I don't know. Talk to me after. Let me give you a hug, okay? That's a hard one. Okay, maybe two more. Mm-hmm. No. I was so fearful of my parents' response that I didn't tell my mom that I struggled until I filmed a thing for KSL 3-4 years ago and was going to be on TV and thought, oh, I should probably tell her before I'm on TV, even though she was in California at the time. So called my mom, said, yeah, I struggle with pornography and masturbation, and she laughed hysterically for about 5 minutes. And I was really offended at first, and then I was like, she's totally just coping right now because she doesn't know what to do. And so I just let her laugh, and then we had this 2-hour conversation, and I realized at that point I didn't need to fear as much as I did, but I did, and so I was bound by that for a long time. But no, I didn't have that. But because of that, I strive to be that for my children. And in our household, we talk about it openly, really openly. So that relationship is dependent on the parent creating a safe space for the child to talk about it openly. So that is possible. So good question. Okay, one more. So for me, I talk about my own struggle. Like, I can't expect them to be vulnerable and talk about their struggle if I'm not willing to talk about my struggle. So at the Togetherness Project, the very first one that I attended, there was a lady there that was presenting, and she said, and this really rang true to me, so I'm going to share her story because I feel like it rings true. She saw an image one day that made her feel uncomfortable. And so she thought, man, if I, an adult who I'm not immersed in that world, sees that image and it's uncomfortable, imagine what my junior high student is seeing and hearing in that world. So when her junior high student got home, she brought him, they have this big giant, this big giant staircase, and they meet in the middle because that's where no one is. And so they meet in the middle of the staircase, and that's where she has her like one-on-one conversations with her kids. And she told him about that. She said, I saw this image today, and it made me feel really uncomfortable, and I thought, maybe you see that kind of stuff all the time. And I just wanted to tell you that you can talk to me about that anytime. My kids, I was on the news last night for UCAP. All of my kids saw that video clip. I'm completely open with my struggle with them. But more importantly, I'm open with my recovery about them. So we don't focus on the actions or things like that. We focus on the recovery aspect of it. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming, and I appreciate you being here.
Okay, I just want, in the spirit of standing, I just want all of you to stand for just a moment. And I want you to know that you are part of, we've done this conference for 15 years. And this is the first time we have had a breakout session totally dedicated for women who struggle with pornography addiction. And I am so thankful for that, and I am so thankful for you. And I'm thankful for the courage that many of you stood here today and shared that you are all pioneers and becoming part of a movement to help women step into the light and end the shame that they feel for struggling with this problem. So everybody give each other a hand. Thank you. Please sit down. Last year, after my speech at UCAP, I spoke about the sex addiction cycle. And a woman came up to me and she said, Jeff, good job. This is great. But there's nothing here for women. And as a therapist and someone who cares, I just stood there, just totally like, you're right. You're right. And so we made it a point in our future board meetings to make sure that I didn't have to look anybody in the eye that didn't have anything that was for them at this conference. And we made that happen. We're so thankful for your support on the advisory board and making this happen. So I just want to give you another round of applause.